we're with Dr. Zoe Badcock, who has a lot of expertise with education, both on and offline. Good morning, Zoe.
Good morning.
Having an online course is very timely as people are increasingly going online due to confinement of isolation measures due to COVID. Have you noticed a big uptake in people taking your course?
We moved to a model of offering free subscriptions when schools shut down to provide support for all of these schools that were scrambling to provide education to students online. And the number of subscriptions almost doubled in that period of time.
Wow.
But I think it's a little bit like panic buying. So, I don't want to compare myself to a toilet roll, but I think that a lot of schools panicked and went around grabbing everything that they could grab. And now, after the month's free subscription is finishing, I'm not sure that everyone actually engaged with the course. They were just trying to take everything. And hopefully, I know that lots of people found it really useful and supportive, but there was a little bit element of running around trying to find what worked for individual situations.
Wow. Well, it was excellent that you had that in place, and very useful that schools had that resource available for free. So I would be interested, do you have any predictions on, as COVID is not going to go away immediately, but do you think that some study habits are going to be changed as a result?
I hope so, because I believe that I'm quite progressive in my view of education, and I think that students need to be empowered to take on their own learning, and that's a gradual process as they get older. And so I hope so, but some habits are hard to break. And so I think that everyone, whether they're teachers or just people in their everyday lives, will go back to what they are most comfortable with. And so it's going to require people to be brave and innovative and to move forward with their teaching, I think.
That's a very interesting point you raised, that the benefits of online learning are more sort of the autodidactic nature, that students take responsibility for their own learning. Could you talk about that a little bit?
So I really strongly believe in what's called student-centered learning, that the student takes control of their own learning, and that as a teacher you're there to empower and to teach them the skills. That's one of the great things about the IB, is that they have these things called approaches to learning, which are encouraged and taught through the subjects. So for example, there's a whole umbrella of approaches to learning about self-management, about resilience building, about organisation, about being self-aware, mindfulness. These are actually embedded in the programme, and so what we want to encourage is that students become more self-aware, learn what works for them, and because that's what you're going to do when you leave school. No one's going to hold your hand forever. You've got to figure out your own ways of learning. So that's the end point for me.
And how is that made more accessible on an online learning platform than a teacher facilitating that in the classroom?
A difficult question. I think that it's not self-evident. I think that these things are in parallel. That's part of the trick of being a school online teacher versus being perhaps a university online teacher. As a school teacher, you are still trying to teach them these skills. So you can't just give them the platform and then leave them to get on with it. You've got to structure it, frame it, guide them, and also give them some access to perhaps surveys that help them self-reflect.
Are there any elements of the transition to more reliance on online digital learning as a result of COVID? Very unexpected silver linings there.
There's a hashtag at the moment, silver linings, for educationalists who are progressive like me, who would like to think that there are silver linings and that we're going to move away from a model that's so dependent upon final exams, because there's very few situations in the real world that are final exams. There are final deadlines, there are high stakes situations, where you're preparing this video for publication, and you've got to get it right, and you look a bit daft if you don't get it right the first time you publish it, right? So there's still high stakes situations, but exams are not, for me, the best way to assess students' ability and performance. So for me, if there was a silver lining, it would be moving away from such a strong emphasis on final exams. But that's very wishful thinking, I'm afraid.
Do others share your view, do you think?
Yes, yeah. But and I'm someone who's been involved in writing exams. I really appreciate the craft of writing exams. I'm someone who's very involved in that, but I just think that it's actually not the best way of assessing someone's abilities, and also about teaching them the skills. What does an exam skill teach you?
Zoe, could you talk about some of the online tools that you're using as educators?
Yeah, so what we've done is relied very heavily on Google Education. They've been quite progressive in the way that they're developing work and provided extra resources for teachers. I know that other schools around the world have been using Zoom like we're using now, but there's been a lot of scare stories about the data protection involved in Zoom, and it's made me very aware of some of the problems or challenges, shall we say, of working with young people online. So we've had to consider whether it's okay to have one-to-one conferences with students, whether you should record the work, and that's provided a lot of challenges that need to be thought about carefully, because we have in education we have something called safeguarding. We have to safeguard the student or young person's rights, but also the educator's rights, so that they're not put in a vulnerable situation. So that's some of the challenges that we face.
Yes, and I would think with GDPR in the mix as well, then there's a lot of responsibility for that. Do you feel that the tools that you have at your disposal are facilitating you to take these questions into account?
I think it's quite ethically challenging, shall we say, because you want to use the best tools that are available, and you want to empower students in all of the ways that with all of the tools that you can. And so I know that a lot of teachers are getting on and just teaching and wanting to do their best, but on the other hand, people who are in charge of things like GDPR are nervous and are looking into where some of these tools store their data, whether they store their data, what are their privacy policies. And I think that there'll be a little bit of back scrambling to try and remedy these situations. But I'm lucky that in the school I'm working in, we have been very pragmatic in the approach we've taken.
Oh, well, Zoe, thank you so much for your time. And
that's quite all right.
Really appreciate it. And thank you for the work you're doing to educate the next generation. It's one of the biggest responsibilities in society, along with health work. So not to be underestimated. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.